Good morning and welcome back to gridXdays Day 2. We had an amazing day yesterday with a huge range of speakers speaking on a range of topics, and we had a lot of engagement from the audience. So thank you a lot to everyone who took part, who engaged in the discussion, who asked questions. That's what this is all about. It's about bringing people together, talking about the hard questions, challenging ideas. So please keep that up today. Write in the chat and the Q&A. So ask your questions there, and yeah, feel free to get as involved as possible. We've got a huge lineup today as well. Lots of interesting panel discussions taking place. And we're kicking it off today with a panel on solar. So we're comparing residential versus large-scale solar power, and we're looking at the challenges in implementing solar power and rolling it out from a regulatory, economic, and a technological perspective. And to do that today, we've got 4 experts joining me on the virtual stage, starting with Wouter Draijer, who's the founder and CEO of Solarmente. Solarmente is on a mission to revolutionize residential solar energy adoption. They're transforming the industry by seamlessly merging software and financing solutions to eliminate the barriers of going solar, from high upfront costs to complex paperwork and unreliable installers. Then we also have Nicola Kleihues, who is the Director of Portfolio Management and Transactions at Vattenfall. Nicola has worked in renewable energy for nearly 10 years. She holds a Master's in Management Engineering from the Technical University of Berlin and works in the Solar and Batteries Department at Vattenfall. Joining her, we also have Catarina Augusto, who is Senior Technical Advisor at SolarPower Europe. She started her professional journey at EREDES, the Portuguese DSO, and has also worked at Alcal Renault. I'm not even going to try that Spanish, in solar PV systems for agro irrigation. Prior to joining SolarPower Europe, she worked in EDSO, the European Electric Power Distribution Industry, where she led the technology committee. And then finally, we have Sarah Merrick, the founder and CEO of Ripple Energy. Prior to founding Ripple Energy, Sarah worked in the wind industry for 20 years, primarily in strategy, energy policy, and communications. Her roles included Head of Public Affairs at Vestas and Vice Chair of Renewable UK, the UK's trade body for wind and marine energy. Before I introduce them to the room, we're going to do a quick introductory video introducing the topic that we're going to discuss today. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Global solar installations have been hitting record highs. 2023 alone was predicted to increase by 56%. In the EU, solar power generation capacity grew by nearly 50% from 2021 to 2022. This is forecasted to more than double by 2026. Coupled with new lows in the price of modules, this all spells good news for the energy transition. But how can we make sure that this solar power is used effectively and won't overload power grids? Do we need more residential or utility scale solar? And how can we ensure lower costs are passed on to end users? Our panel, Solar, Large Scale versus Residential, will expand on these growing markets and talk about what we can expect next.
Okay, now we have all of the speakers in the room. So Nicola, Catarina, and Wouter, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Exactly. Happy to be here.
Great to hear. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the questions. Nicola, first one for you. The EU solar power generation capacity grew by nearly 50% from 2021 to 2022. And it's forecast to double by 2026, or even more than double. How would you describe the current state of the solar industry in Europe?
Well, I think there are many words for it. I mean, you could call it solar boom, as we heard already some years ago, solar era, whatever you call it. We see that solar is really here and also, I think, to stay. And that is maybe also a difference from what we've seen in the past. You've mentioned the growth figures, and we expect them to continue. So we expect a robust and continuous growth. I mean, there are many factors driving this, also, of course, on the different levels, EU level, national level, mainly also driven by regulatory changes. But all in all, I mean, with the Repower EU package, we've seen a massive increase of targets. Also on national levels, we've seen similar things. For example, in Germany, 215 gigawatt by 2030. Both residential and utility scale solar. So the path is clear. Also, the conditions are very well right now. I mean, that was mentioned in the trailer. Technology. I mean, solar already for a while has been in many countries LCOE leader, but now with the massive decrease in module prices, we've seen, I think, minus 40%, 50% decrease in module prices since beginning of the year. That, I mean, we knew that was a technology where we will see lots of cost decreases, but that is just really impressive. So as said, I expect robust growth and continuous growth. Still, of course, not everything is just sunny. We also see some difficulties, of course, on our way. I mean, supply chain, that is definitely a topic. Not sure if we will touch upon it today, but the domestic supply chain in the EU, how do we deal with that? With still being able to benefit also from low prices of modules. Financing has also been a topic, of course, in recent months, with interest rates being quite high. In general, we already see electricity prices going down again. So it never gets boring, just to mention a few challenges. But in general, I would say, really optimistic.
Thanks, Nicola. A lot of really important topics there. I just want to focus a little bit on plummeting prices for solar modules that you mentioned. Catarina, SolarPower Europe released a letter saying that the prices of solar actually dropped by over 25% this summer. Is that a good thing, or does this actually bring new challenges as well?
Yeah, thank you, Greta. So it's true. It seems that this summer there was kind of what we call it the perfect storm of market conditions. So it is a situation where you have strong high demand signals worldwide, and this make a strong competition from the different Chinese suppliers to make this oversupply that impacted not just the prices of the panels, but go deeper on the silicon, on the inverters, manners, so the full supply chain. And it is a challenge, but it's a challenge, and we also urge, and we sent a letter to the Commission in order to solve this situation and help EU manufacturers to go against this low prices crisis. So we had around 7 points where we went from shifting energy frequency of European PV manufacturers, models, inventors, to establish a solar manufacturing bank at EU level, address inequities and temporary transition and crisis framework, accelerated adoption of the Net Zero Industry Act that we are working strongly on it. Advance the intent of Impact EU Forced Labor Regulation by banking solar stewardship initiative, enable collaboration between the different member states to support programs in Europe, and then also a balance between oversupply with further boost of demand for solar PV in Europe. So to have more solar PV in Europe itself.
Thank you, Catarina. And Wouter, how do you think the energy crisis kind of affected the way people think about solar or their attitudes towards solar power?
Before I start answering that, I think we have to give credit to the maker of the video. It's another justification that everybody here on this panel is in the right industry. Having that said, we actually talked with thousands of users, and we found out that people think only 2-3 times per year of energy. That's something people take for granted. It's there. They don't really think about it. So what increasing or high electricity prices do for us is that people see it more as a topic to talk about. It is FOMO, it is fear. People do not want to miss out, and especially like what we all have in common is that we do not like to pay energy bills, and especially not when they're higher. So for us working in the B2C residential solar sector, increasing electricity prices for us a very good topic starter. People actually want to talk about energy and want to talk about how to get the energy price lower for a very long period of time. So what we've seen over the last 2 years, we had 2 peaks in demand and also 2 peaks right now in how many people right now go for solar. Something that was shared before is that the price of electricity or the price for solar panels right now is very low, sometimes even 50% lower. But that is, again, that is a game of supply and demand. It's not that the manufacturing price is 50% lower, it's because people right now do not want to buy solar. For instance, in Spain right now, the electricity prices are capped. They are six months in a row already subsidized. So right now, people don't really buy solar. Solar prices in Spain are fairly low, and we do expect that to change that in the beginning of 2024, when the new grants of Repower EU actually come into practice.
Thanks, Wouter. And talking about Repower EU and kind of increased targets, Catarina, the EU is aiming to have 750 gigawatts of solar capacity by 2030. On a large scale, this is creating long queues of renewable energy projects. SolarPower Europe recommended how would turning the grid's action plan into a grid flexibility action plan help to ensure that we actually reach this target?
Yeah, so just to maybe put a bit of numbers also in the picture, the last report from the Internal Energy Agency, and there was also yesterday a presentation on your event, said that we have 1,000 projects in queue in Europe and US, and there is much more worldwide. And yeah, we ask for flexibility, although it's not about turning the grid action plan into a flexibility plan, but rather to give flexibility a key role on this action plan that is being designed by the Commission, and we expect it to come out in the end of November. So what we propose is that we bring a grid and a flexibility action plan, because I think it's a fact, and everyone knows here that works on the business, that besides the prices, also if we don't have a way to connect to the grid, there is no injection of solar, there is no also good prices for consumers regarding this supply. And it's also a fact that the grid development, so it's essential. We need more cables, we need more substations, and we need much more investment on grids. However, we also know that grid infrastructure take around 10 years at least to be built in high voltage, and maybe some less years in distribution. And this is a problem. So we need to also take in consideration what we need to react now and short term, and that's flexibility. At the moment, we have congestion spreading around Europe very fast. Spain, Netherlands, Germany, Bulgaria, and Ireland are already in a top list of congestion countries. And Poland, for example, you cannot even connect solar in residential areas, for example. So that's a big problem, and that's why we want to focus so much on the workout flexibility and bring this possibility of giving less burdens to the grid, and while they need the time to develop in the next years.
Thanks, Catarina. Obviously, flexibility, very important topic that we will go into a little bit more. But first, Nicola, we've talked about both sides of the equation here. Can you delve a little bit deeper into the advantages and the challenges of utility scale solar versus small scale solar?
Yeah, sure. Though I would, and actually I always say that if I'm asked within Vattenfall about offshore wind versus solar, same answer I would give here. We need both. So I don't think it's a versus. I rather think it's where you apply which technology or which use case. I mean, I think that the most common fact is utility scale solar still is much cheaper than residential. But I think, I mean, also hearing, I mean, we touched a bit upon it, that, I mean, resilience and I mean, residential solutions are needed. I mean, the term of a prosumer, I think that is a key thing that we need to drive this energy transition forward. We've also touched upon grid congestion now. I mean, not always, but potentially you have less investment in grid if you really force that prosumer status. And then, yeah, on cost, I mean, that is clear. But also, I mean, as said, it's both cases are needed. You have pros and cons for both. You have land scarcity. It also always depends a bit on the country you're in and the situation you're looking at. But eventually, we really need both. So I would rather want to discuss topics for solar as such.
Thanks. Wouter, would you agree with that?
I think, Nicola, you know, like nobody else, that solar, bigger wind farms are on the side of the production. But what we've learned working for 4 years in industry is that the one actually using the energy and the consumer side is living in the house, has its energy production, consumption, and distribution located at the house itself. You named it perfectly. It's a prosumer. So whether you have only bigger solar fields, that's not the solution. If you have only residential solar installations, that's not the solution. It is the balance of bigger scale or large scale solar installations together with the prosumers, because actually the one that is using the electricity when there is no sun energy or wind energy available lives in a house, and it is during the evening hours and early morning. It should be a balance, and it should be a balance where people use much electricity, for example, EV chargers, heat pumps, still on a very low penetration side in Spain, together with energy production like solar.
And maybe if I can add one thing to that, indeed, completely agree. And to be honest, we also see some mixed cases even coming up these days. I mean, we cooperate with lots of industrial players, and they have sometimes acres and acres of land available. So they do not want to only put solar on their roofs and on their carports, but also on the fields they have available. I mean, this is sometimes already industrial area, not really used. So why not put panels everywhere, so to say, where they can create value and deliver electricity to the consumer? And in this case, the consumer can also be a big industrial player.
Catarina, did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I think there's very interesting cases nowadays on solar. It's a very flexible resource. Like Nicola was saying, and Wouter, I couldn't agree more, because in the end, we have solar helping on farm, on agricultural fields. We have solar helping on less evaporation of water when we have a lot of droughts nowadays. So this is our situations that solar can even complement a bit what's happening on the other activities and the other sectors, aside from just providing energy. So definitely.
Thanks, Catarina. And if we look more from a regulatory perspective, there's quite a few regulatory hurdles that differ for different size installations. Nicola, could you maybe talk about what you think some of these regulatory hurdles are and how could we overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same again for residential and utility scale. Permitting procedures, for them to be clearer, faster, more effective, it's always a topic, right? I mean, to be honest, we see promises on both EU level and also national levels. For example, I mean, talking about the German market, I've, to be honest, not seen that much progress yet. Still, hopes are high that we will see bureaucracy going down and permitting to be faster and easier, but that is still a main issue. And I mean, then Germany again is a very special case with the federalistic setup. You have many different then regulations in the different states, which makes it even more intransparent and difficult. And then, of course, also, and that's particularly for utility scale, community involvement, community participation, local electricity tariffs. So really get the communities involved. That is also a very important topic there. And there we have made some big progress. And I think that is only really evolving now. Again, it depends on the country. In the Netherlands, that is already done for many years now. But also the other markets follow. So I think these would probably be the main points for utility.
Thanks, Nicola. And Catarina, maybe adding on that, bottlenecks in grid connection procedures is also a bit of a barrier there. Do you want to elaborate on how that is affecting the energy transition?
Yeah, definitely. So in the last months, we work together with the electric DSOs to open the conversation and come clear why we have such a big number of queues for connecting to the grid. And we understood that it's taking as a basis the permitting points that Nicola already talked about. Regarding when we go to connect a project to the grid, there is no uniform rules for OEMs in Europe or even at national. So each DSO there have their own rules. There is no clear timelines how the process develops. And there is also the fact that there is not a digitalized process. It's also something that difficults everything, and it makes unclear how they should develop it, and the delays much more. And when you finally think that you're going to achieve, everything goes back. So let's say what we need first is to have a kind of an harmonized national rule book where it's clear the role of each stakeholder on this process. The process itself have every stage very clear to everyone. At national level, there is a clear timeline of each of these stages. Then secondly, when the PV developer is also studying and designing their project, there is the need of a visibility of the grid. So not to arrive to the DSO or to the national regulator and say, look, I want to connect here, but there is no capacity. So this is already something that will make it a bigger queue in the time. And then another point is to having this progress digitalized with a ticking system where you can see how it develops during the time. It's also facilitate and make it everything go faster than nowadays it's happening. So we believe this is the clear points that we need to integrate regarding grid connection.
Thanks, Catarina. And just going in a little bit more detail on one point, you said we need a national playbook. Do you think we need a more kind of harmonized policy across Europe, or do you think we need to tailor that to different countries and different needs?
So regarding connection itself, we have network codes that are designed at EU level. What this national rule book is, it's more kind of inside national situations that are too specifically to be developed at national level. So it's more to an understanding there, depending on you have your government form, if it's the supposedly system operator that needs to do that connection or the regulator that needs to do. So it's some kind of different small changes that some countries have depending of their let's say structure in terms of political ways and roles. But it's important, and that's a fact, that we need network codes to be harmonized at European level as much as possible. And this is important for our business development, because in the end we just not operate in one country, you're operating in several countries as a company.
Mm-hmm. And Wouter, what's your opinion on some of the regulatory barriers for residential solar?
I can give you two examples. One in Holland, where I worked in the same sector, and in Spain. We know that there are around 8,000 municipalities in Spain that every single one has different way of applying for a building permit for solar, the legalization after the installation, resulting in more or less 30% of our costs going to the legalization of the product, which is absolutely insane. How it was in Holland is that you register the system, you get your surplus compensation, and you can just install whenever you want. We know that in order to accelerate the energy transition right now in Spain, same as the rest for Europe, you need a very transparent and open way how to apply for building permits and the legalization part. When it comes to energy distribution, I'm of the opinion that it should be regulated in Europe as a whole. But for the residential sector in solar installations, it should be only focused on Spain itself, because it takes way too much time right now.
Thank you, Wouter. And let's talk a little bit more about how we deal with surplus solar. Obviously, solar is inherently intermittent. It's reliant on when the sun is shining. How can we better deal with curtailment, surplus, storage, and ensure that we're really maximizing the use of solar power? Nicola?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we already touched upon the right regulatory framework, right? That is very important to enable then the things we've mentioned, a prosumer and all of that. Digitization also, Catarina already mentioned. This is also key. I mean, I saw in Jenny Chase's Twitter feeds, I think she mentioned, everyone needs a hobby. Go and track the electricity prices, and then during the right times you can actually get it for free. Yeah, it's very funny indeed, but then at the other side, I mean, we want people to be enabled, right? And we don't want the few to spend their hobby on this, but we really want to have transparency and make this easier, and in that way it can stabilize itself a bit, right? So I think this is very important. Then, of course, advanced and cheap technology. I mean, talking about batteries, for example, that is crucial. We already have some economically feasible cases today. We, as Vattenfall, we're developing solar plus batteries co-located. Also, that always depends a bit on the country and the regulatory framework you have. But in Germany, this is already a decent case. But yeah, these are all very important things, and it will not work without, if we do not manage to realize all of them.
Catarina, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it takes a point to the points on flexibility we have been talking, but this recognition and coming even points that we talk about in the beginning of putting solar together with batteries or another renewables, hybridization. I think this is still not yet well recognized. In Europe and the regulation, we fought on the requirements for generator network code, just very technical, but just for you to see that every file that you have to work on network code, also it's important just to recognize something as simple as we thought that putting solar together with wind, it's very acknowledged that are complementary and also storage, and they support the grid, and they also make a better case for a renewable system. So just to point out this maybe from Nicola, because I think it's very important to come with the word hybridization and the understanding and the knowledge and U level.
And Bear, to be honest, I mean, these are the most complex and toughest projects we have in the pipeline, right? I mean, it's not only internally that we need to work more closely than ever before, but also externally again. And I mean, the conditions need to be ready. You can have a great business case, but then if you need to pay grid fees for the battery, the business case is destroyed. So this is very important. And then I like what you mentioned there. This needs to be understood, and that is also a main difficulty. These are complex combinations, complex projects. If you're talking to a grid operator and hybrid projects and how this can be done with the metering concept is not understood, it makes it very hard to realize such projects. And same goes for example, project financing and banks. Make them understand how a battery works with all the use cases. Yeah. It's tough, and it's not like, I mean, also with solar we say cannibalization and revenues are not always stable and secured, but adding a battery and wind and in a hybrid park, it's even more complex.
No, indeed. And if I can add just one more thing, for example, and that's still a case in Germany, double charging for storage. So this was one of the requests on the clean energy package to be implemented on countries, and the list of countries that implemented it's still very small. I still can count with my fingers just for you to understand that how small it is. On the 27 member states that we needed to implement this, and this is crucial for the development of business in storage. And without this, it's very difficult to bring flexibility to the grid, to inject properly more solar on the grid, and to have less curtailment of solar and other renewables.
And Wouter, do you have anything to add there from within a household perspective?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's related to the smart meter penetration, because this concept works best when there's a smart meter penetration, something that you can measure the consumption and production with. And I do think we miss out on one very specific thing, because we talk a lot about production, but with over 3,000 hours of sun in the south of Italy and in Spain, it's undoubtedly there's enough energy available. The challenge we face is when we use the energy, and if there's enough clean energy available at the time this is the case. So we created a little pilot here to show what we think will be the energy future of Spain is that we install, for example, solar on a big warehouse. All the employees can go to the office, can charge their electric cars with clean energy from the warehouse, and take that energy home when they commute to their households. And when they connect to a bidirectional EV charger, this EV, this battery, this mobile battery, is actually able to power the households of the people that work in this kind of company. That is indeed a switch in awareness, but we do see it happening, and we have a pilot actually working to provide these kind of solutions.
Thanks, Wouter. And we've had our fourth panelist join us. Sorry, bit of a delay there due to some technical issues, but Sarah Merrick, thank you for joining us, founder of Ripple Energy. I'm going to put you straight in the deep end with a question. We've talked a bit about prosumers, increasing transparency. From your perspective, how can we encourage more citizen engagement to make the rollout of solar power a bit faster and more effective?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is giving people the opportunity. So letting people know, obviously people know that they can have solar on their roof, but letting them understand that there are other potentially a lot lower cost options. Like, Ripple enables people to own small parts of large scale solar parks. It's about 60% cheaper in the UK than having solar on your roof, but it's, it's suitable for everyone, whether you live in a flat or whether you rent, if you live in behind a big tree and there's loads of shade on your roof. So yeah, it's just about helping people understand that there's a massive range of different options available for solar. It's not just solar on your own roof and requiring that you own that roof. There are lots and lots of different options. So obviously there's also enabling people to get maximum benefit from the solar that they own. So making sure the tax regime is aligned with the treatment of solar. But yeah, a lot of it is just about raising awareness that this is now a really easy way that people can get involved, because we see lots of people want to own solar, but it's not always possible, like I said, if you live in an apartment or if you rent.
Thank you, Sarah. And in line with that, Nicola, how is the new kind of renewable energy landscape changing partnerships between energy stakeholders, particularly looking at consumers, energy providers, and everyone along behind the scenes? What is the importance of partnerships and ecosystems increasing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole energy transition, I mean, we always like to talk about sector coupling. I think not always we are there yet, but definitely, I mean, the world is becoming more complex, the energy world in this case, and we need stakeholders to engage with each other, and that definitely increases, and that or needs to increase, because, yeah, already Wouter touched upon it. I mean, EVs connected then to surplus electricity. Such things are needed to make this transition work. And the question for me is always, we as Vattenfall, we also build a lot on partnerships with the industry. Then we still need to also see, okay, what are we best at? So us developing, building renewable energies, what we try to do is, and I mean, we are a utility, then there are needs that go beyond simply a CPPA, right? People need just a holistic green energy package, so to say. And that is where we try to come in and then really offer these integrated packages, so to say, so that you do not only have, or we do not only give them accessibility to a utility scale solar park and deliver them the electricity from there, but also enable, for example, storage, flexibility, maybe on their premises even, give them access to the market, work on solutions with them. And I think this is more and more important. We also have a project where we have teamed up with data centers, and then not only, again, provide them with green electricity, but also explore opportunities to use the heat that comes out of the data centers. So I think going the extra mile, so to say, thinking a bit ahead, okay, how can we deviate from our standard corporations or products that we've worked on, and work on more holistic solutions that I think definitely is needed and also requested. I mean, again, talking about utility, our customers, they're from our perspective, working on utility scale solar are the big industrial players. and they need holistic solutions for energy supply.
Wouter, would you agree with that?
For me, I do see the demand in partnerships rapidly increasing. I can give you an example in Spain, because it's been 8 years, almost 8 years, impossible to install residential solar. There were only energy players available on the market, some only powered by fossil fuels, and the others only promoting green energy. And right now we are in a very crucial moment where we live in a country where the knowledge about solar and sustainability in general is actually very low. So as startups and bigger corporates, is the challenge to grow as fast as possible? I don't think so. I think it's creating awareness where people are educated on the opportunity to go solar, or to contribute positively to climate by driving EVs and having heat pumps. And you do that with partnerships. And we see many companies, smaller and big, combining and actually facing this challenge together. It's also in the stage where we are right now. Right now, we've been the minesweeper in the energy transition in Spain. We're the first one to register 4 years ago. And right now we're also partnering up with bigger real estate companies and energy companies to actually accelerate our company and the energy transition in Spain.
Thanks, Wouter. We've had a question from the audience directed towards Nicola. They say Vattenfall states in an article that balcony solar becomes increasingly popular in the residential sector. How do you evaluate the potential of such applications?
Good question. I would think maybe the Wouter can even better answer on that one, because what we're doing in the department I'm responsible for is we're working on utility scale solar. So as you know, Vattenfall is a big house, and I'm not really an expert on that application. Not sure if anyone else knows more about it. I mean, in general, I would say there again, regulatory important and technology, but I think the technology is already there.
Wouter, do you want to react?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping for that. Yes, but I can even tell you something what we've learned over the years, and this is related to the adoption, related to the buying behavior. We've seen that people have their 10,000 euros ready to buy solar, but normally they actually want to keep it for themselves. They want to keep their investment, their assets on their bank account to invest in other kinds of assets. Now, for solar, you can actually make money from day one. You can only do that when you invested in a lease model. So we came up with a solar subscription, basically a model where we can sell savings from day one. So we raised 53 million earlier this year to accelerate only that. And by that, we take away the financial doubts, and we can actually provide savings from day one. We created the opportunity for every house owner in Europe to contribute directly to climate and save money from day one. So I think that is only possible when you can connect that to tech. GridX, perfect example. And in combination with GridX, EV chargers, heat pumps, solar, and local storage, we're able to make clients save 35% more than any traditional energy provider here in Spain.
And again, that's a great example. We've talked about it, partnerships, right? In this ecosystem where everything is connected, you need really everyone on board and work together on solutions. Again, a very good example.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Wouter. And we've talked a bit about cost. We've talked about the plummeting cost of solar modules. Obviously, the sun shines for free. How can we ensure that the cheaper cost of renewables, particularly solar, is then passed on to end users? Sarah, maybe starting with you.
Yes, so we've seen over the last couple of years with the energy price crisis, electricity prices can rocket, and that just feeds through to really high prices for consumers. So what Ripple does, enabling consumers to actually own the source. The cost of generating electricity from a solar park does not change regardless of what's happening in the gas market and with gas prices. So it's really, really important to enable consumers to be part of that ownership mix, and they can then access their solar park, the generation from their solar park at its really low operating costs. And that's everything that Ripple is about, is just enabling consumers to be part of that ownership mix and giving them access to the really, really low costs that solar generates. It's if you're an end consumer without your own source of clean power, you will be vulnerable to whatever the current electricity price is. And we've seen just how vulnerable consumers are. Whereas, our members, it's a wind farm, not a solar park, but, they're set to save nearly £1,000 off their electricity bill this year because they own their own source of low cost, stable price green power. It has to be, consumers have to be at the top of the value chain, not just sitting at the bottom where they have been for decades.
Wouter, what are your thoughts on this, and also bringing in the idea of accessibility so that everyone can access these solutions?
Yeah, I was thinking, Sarah, last weeks were the first time I actually heard about Ripple Energy, but knowing that owning a solar panel, but somewhere else, community is a very strong selling machine for you. And knowing Spain, I'm almost convinced that this system will work really well. And here's why. Around 75% of the Spanish population lives in bigger building blocks, beautiful classic building blocks without a roof, or at least a very small roof. You can only install solar for say 15 panels, 20 panels, but it's not enough to cover the full consumption. Now, what will work is where you install local farms outside these cities, and that is where Spain is perfectly suitable for, because there's tons of space available, but not on rooftops. I think this model will be very, very beneficial in a country like Spain.
Yeah, we hope to come to Spain quite soon. So yeah, exactly. And if you can't access, if you haven't got a roof that's big enough to generate enough solar power, even now, before we've done the big shift to heat pumps and electric cars, consumers need to have access to that ownership, and owning a little part of a big solar park is way more cost effective than just having it on your roof. But it's really important to, as you said, it's all about accessibility and making that option accessible for everyone, no matter what type of property you live in.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, go for it, Nicola.
Yeah, one thing to add, because the question on how can we make sure that consumers benefit from the low cost of solar. I would also like to bring in an example from, again, utility scale, where, most of the solar parks we build are subsidy free. So what we do is we source corporate power purchase agreements. So we team up with big corporates in need of green electricity, and then they get the electricity from our solar parks. And also there, Sarah touched upon it last year, we've seen quite high prices, and normally these CPPAs, these agreements are then priced based on electricity market prices, right? So they're based on this. So prices were last year very high. You could close very attractive contracts from asset operator perspective. But also there, we went into deeper discussions and partnerships with the off-takers to actually work on a bit of a different model, and not anymore base the price on really the electricity market. But of course, they also benefit from what they see, what happens to modules, etc. So what we worked on is formulas, even where you look into, okay, when we see the cost for solar going down, let also the CPPA off-takers benefit from it. And you could do so also in both directions, right? This is also what we need when we talk about partnerships. We need to share risk, because we are operating in a very dynamic and sometimes unstable environment. So such instruments and such collaboration types, I think, are very important to make sure that we really have a scale of growth in front of us.
Thanks, Nicola. And we've had a question from the audience. It's going to be our last question, unfortunately. I'll direct it towards Catarina. So talking about partnerships on a larger scale, a viewer has asked, can countries collaborate on large-scale solar projects? And can these partnerships address the challenges of energy security and sustainability?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I imagine this is about bringing up the interconnections discussions that have been happening in Europe, outside of Europe. Yeah, interconnections are possible, although it's not the only solution, and it's not something that we just should completely focus on, because let's say doing high transport of energy also implies a lot of losses of energy on the cables. So it's still not, there's still some technical issues regarding that. It's not a possibility to take out of the table, but not the only one to to be supported on. Then there is another point that we also understood with the war in Russia, that we should not just be supported by another country, but we should also develop each other's country's energy supply. So it's important to not be let's say waiting for your supply to come all from one country. And then another point is like, why wouldn't you like to take in advantage the extra benefits that solar could bring to your country? And we are not just talking about energy supply and the prices, but bringing again the point of helping on better development of agriculture. It brings more sustainability to the fields. It supports also the development of these the crops in different kind of crops, not just a specific one, but diverse of them. It reduces water needs in terms of farming. It also supports the fact of the drownings that we've been seeing in many countries like Spain and Portugal, where you have PV panels on dams and lakes. So this is something that is not just about the energy supply, but what these kind of projects can bring also in terms of the full in climate on each other's countries. So it's important that you think also inside of the country. Of course, collaborating in Europe, it's always a good way to do, but not the only thing to do, let's say.
Thank you so much, Catarina. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I think this discussion could go on for hours. There's so much to discuss, but I think we've touched on some really important topics. So thank you so much to the four of you for the really valuable insights and for imparting some of your wisdom this morning.